So the Street Fighter V story has always been pretty whack, I would say. I don't even think that's a hot take. I'm sure a lot of you guys agree with me on that. There's a lot of the individual character stories that just don't go anywhere or progress into anything. They're just like quick short stories for a quick laugh. Honda's story, Abigail's story. There's a lot of joke characters, a lot of things that don't really make any sense. And there are some new characters introduced that are just hyped up at the beginning, or at least we thought they were hyped up, and they don't do anything at all. Like Nikali, like what happened there in the cinematic story? It was just like weird. It was like a part of something else. It didn't really make sense. And yeah, it's a fighting game story. We're kind of trained now to turn our brains off and simply just enjoy the ride, like a popcorn flick or something. But there are a couple of characters I'd say that do deliver and they do give us something. Capcom has done some, well, I wouldn't say retconning, I guess that's a bad way of saying it, but there's some stuff like Zeku, which is cool. There are some characters that give us that carrot on the stick, so to speak, that leads us to whatever the next chapter in the story Capcom wants to tell us. And the biggest one by far, especially recently, is G, and the recently released Rose, who gave us more on her story. If you haven't watched Rose's story in the game, it's pretty good. It's not like 100%, a Stephen King novel or anything like that, but it's starting to tie things together now. And Capcom is strongly giving us, hints and information on the story direction for Street Fighter 6 and beyond on what their direction they're going to. Now, guys, I'm no detective, all right? I'm gonna tell you straight up, I barely know Street Fighter's storyline or whatever. A lot of it's based off nostalgia or what you guys tell me, and I'm definitely no tarot card expert. But I'm gonna do my best to summarize what we know so far with this storyline and where it's kind of leading into. So let's start with G and why he's so interesting. Who is G? So let's start with the obvious. G heavily resembles Q from Street Fighter 3. There are a lot of hints in his move list that he does. Even the name, he's mysterious like Q as well. And we know Q is a popular character that was requested. So there are a lot of things that hint that G is in fact Q. If you just look at the move list alone, that's already a giant hint. Now, like I said, G is a very strange character. We barely know anything about him. We kind of have an idea what his intentions are, but we don't know his true intentions. And even that is explained pretty vaguely. He addresses everybody as Earthlings. He uses the power of Gaia slash the Earth, same thing. And he claims to be the president of the world, all right? And the way he dresses and looks, he acts the part. He's also very powerful in the game and in the story, by the way. He's a very strong character. He pretty much defeats everyone he runs into in his story. And he is a very strong influence on everybody as well. That's another thing that he has going from. He's very influential to everyone. And you can see that in his story that he's actually succeeding on that. He has everybody's attention. Everyone's watching him online. All the other Street Fighters are watching. Now, in G's storyline, if we go back, we see that Minata is actually reading his fortune. And it reveals that his tarot card is the Fool. Okay? So she messes up and she reads the card incorrectly. And she thinks the card is upside down, thinking he's an actual fool, right? He's a goof and whatever. So she goes out to challenge him, find more about him, and then she gets her butt whooped, all right? And she doesn't realize that the tarot card Fool was actually right side up. And doing my quick Google search, we know that the Fool right side up can pretty much mean unlimited potential. It can mean their journey can literally lead to anywhere. It's zero. It can mean anything. Now, we don't know if G is a bad guy. We don't actually know if he's a bad or evil character. We do know that he's not like us, and he has the potential to change the world or unite the world, so to speak, and succeed due to this fortune telling, due to this tarot card. That's what's getting everybody's attention. So if we go by some interviews back then as well, we know that Capcom actually confirmed that G is the final boss of Street Fighter V. Now, I don't think they did a very good job explaining that or, telling us whether you didn't read that interview, but it does actually make sense in the where the story is right now, because Gil's story is just starting. He's just like assembling all the pieces on the chessboard, so to speak. He's setting up all the pieces. He's ready to make his move, but he hasn't started his first move yet. That hasn't happened. And if we fast forward now to Rose's storyline, she actually confronts G now and realizes this current potential threat right now. Now, Rose mentions in her storyline that this threat is not like M. Bison, this like evil psycho power or anything. It's more of a force of nature, implying this whole Gaia thing. And she's talking about this with Oro, who also feels the same power. Now, Rose confronts G, and after fighting G, the situation gets much worse, as it's revealed now that Rose now knows G will eventually succeed in what he wants to do. And even G admits that he knows he will succeed as well. I know it's very vague, but that's just how the story is going right now. We know G wants to unite people, and we know he's going to succeed on whatever he wants to do. The biggest takeaway from this is that it's inevitable. No matter what happens from this point, Rose knows that he's going to win. The wheels of fate have already begun, already from the point when Rose first was defeating M. Bison. Now, no one can stop this at this point. So, the only way to prevent this, and this is where it gets weird, is for Rose to contact herself in the past. Okay, and she even says to start again from zero. She actually quotes that. Zero implying Alpha series, Street Fighter Alpha, or the beginning, because it's called Zero in Japan instead of Street Fighter Alpha. Now, I know you guys must be rolling your eyes right now. Time travel plots are always very convoluted, and it's not some mystery that we haven't seen in a fighting game before. I mean, Mortal Kombat 9, they did a huge reboot with the time travel thing. Mortal Kombat has more of an excuse, though. We're talking 9 games in this series, man. You can only go so far, alright? And when it comes to fighting games, sometimes we don't want these characters to age. You know, some people want to see Ryu as 80 years old or Chun-Li 80 years old. I don't know exactly how old these characters are now, but, we have to have some type of containment in this storyline. They wanted to bring back Nash, for example, so they had to kind of retcon that. These are things that are going to happen. But from my perspective and seeing all of this and seeing what you guys think about and reading what other people are saying, I personally don't think Capcom wants to retcon the story of Street Fighter or do a reboot themselves. I don't think that's what they're implying here with this. The big key hint that we have for all this information is Q, okay? We know that Q exists in Street Fighter 3. And now that I think about it, the absence of Rose as well is also a pretty big hint for the Street Fighter 3 storyline. Now, if you think about it, this is more of a structured way Capcom could smoothly lead the storyline to Street Fighter 3, which is more than likely the actual conclusion of the story of Street Fighter. I can't think of a more worthy foe than Gil being the final opposition in the Street Fighter storyline. Like, guys, he's a god. He's a god. How are they going to top that? How are they going to top that? And plus, the bosses have been pretty lacking in the Street Fighter storyline. It's just M. Bison and Gil are the only really cool boss characters, okay? There's no way they're going to top that or go beyond that. If you think about it, the whole Street Fighter 3 storyline ends pretty much. It's fight for the future, and they start a new generation, okay? The only way we can go beyond the Street Fighter 3 storyline for Street Fighter 6 is that we have to forget about the other characters. Ryu, Ken, their arcs are finishing. They're finished. It wouldn't make sense to go beyond that. That's why I think no matter how much we want the story to go past Street Fighter 3, it just doesn't make sense to. It'd be more of like a fan fiction point because it just ends so well. Now let me backtrack for a second, okay? And let me explain why this whole Q thing is the key piece of information. And a lot of people have actually pointed this out as well, okay? The fact that Q exists and we know he exists is the weird part because we know that G and Q are somehow related. There's somehow some relation to this story. And if we just assume that Q is indeed G in the future, all right, Capcom wouldn't make these characters so related for nothing. There has to be some kind of tie-in, right? It shows us that somehow Rose actually succeeded in sealing G's powers, changing the future, and somehow it moves on to the next chapter where Gil is involved, right? And G's out of the picture. It shows Q, he looks like a shell of his former self. Now, I know we're in the theory part of the story. This is pure speculation, of course, right? But I think that holds more water than simply saying, hey, Capcom is planning a reboot of the series. I don't think it works that way. Rose is contacting her past self, right? Which isn't exactly time travel. And it still seems like it's going to end up being the Street Fighter 3 story anyways. What happens to Rose? Where did she go? Right? There's something involved with this. And I think that's really cool and that's really interesting. I think Capcom needs to do more of this kind of stuff and not at the end of the game. And maybe hopefully in Street Fighter 6 they can add on to this. But this also asks us some other questions too. If they want Street Fighter 6 to take place before even Street Fighter 2, if they want to go back to Zero slash Alpha series, I mean, man, that's going to eliminate the potential of a lot of characters. Not because they can't retcon it, but I'm saying a lot of these characters aren't even born yet. You know what I mean? There's going to be no Makoto. Makoto's not even born yet. They're going to have to either make a character that's like an archetype or like a function of Makoto. Say, oh, it's Makoto's teacher or something. They're going to have to do something like that. So it kind of spoils a lot of the character roster for us if they want to go back in that story. The other way they can do it is they can make Street Fighter 6 yet again. It takes place after Street Fighter 4, after Street Fighter 5, but before Street Fighter 3, and then they still tell the story of how Rose accomplished this task. That's another way they can do it as well. But at the end of the day, I think this is a pretty good way of doing it. I really don't want Capcom to reboot the series. I think that's a bad idea. I know the story is a mess, but I think they can salvage it. They can salvage it with how it's going now. What do you guys think about it? Would you guys like it if they went back to the Alpha series and the story? It'd be really strange. I'm thinking it from a gameplay point of view. I'm thinking character roster and mechanics and that timeline, what they're going to be, because Ryu won't be powerful. He won't have this whole Satsuno Hado thing by that time. These characters will be very young, right? So the game will be more restrained on a power type of way. That's how I'm thinking about it. But I don't know. It's, like I said, it's a really interesting topic, and I wish we get some more. Maybe when the oral storyline comes out, maybe we'll get even more storyline on that. But yeah. All right, I'm kind of rambling here, guys. So let me know in the comments below what you guys think about this. Are they going to reboot the series, or are we on to something now with Street Fighter 3? Do you guys want the game to take place after Street Fighter 3? All right, guys. Have a great weekend. Take care. Peace out.